Hello and welcome back to the Parc Fermé Parlay podcast with Kieran Downey. We are here after the Spanish Grand Prix to recap everything from probably the most exciting Spanish Grand Prix we've had in a while. Barcelona is not known for providing good racing, good results, good on-track action. It's probably a pretty boring circuit, to be completely honest with you. But my God, did we get an exciting race? We did. I wouldn't go as far as to say it was as exciting as Canada, but there was an exciting element to it. It went up until the last few laps. I was watching the laps countdown and watching Lando's time in between him and Max, just watching it drop and drop and drop. And I honestly, at one point, I thought Lando got it in the bag. Do I believe that Lando should have won the race? Yeah, I do. I think that Lando had everything in him to win this race. Start from the back. Let's get into the Haas drivers and let's get into Kevin Magnussen, who qualified 16th and finished 16th. In fact, let's stick Nico Hülkenberg in there as well because I don't have much to say about either driver. So Nico Hülkenberg qualified 13th, finished 11th. I don't have much to say about the Haas drivers in general. They were there. They were there. They weren't the worst. They weren't the best. They were just there. Haas was there. Haas started the race. Haas finished the race. No real moments of note. So let's move on to the stake drivers, starting off with Zhou Guanyu, who qualified 15th and finished 13th. Can I just say that I have said a lot of negative things about Zhou Guanyu. I have been not the most endearing towards Zhou. I have not been the most positive about his performances, but I will say that that is because there's not been many performances of his to be positive about. However, him finishing 13th, I will say is promising because they are driving a dustbin. Am I surprised that Zhou did as well as he did this year? I am. Do I think that it is probably just the circuit? Part of me will say yes. I think it is circumstantial to Barcelona. We'll be interested to see what he does in Austria next week. If he can start pulling together this kind of performance, could he be in with a chance of a race seat next year? If he can consistently pull P13s over the next few races, there's a very high chance he could be. Do I think that will happen? No, I do think Zhou Guanyu will still be out at the end of the season, but my God, it was nice to see him not P20. Next up, Valtteri Bottas, who qualified 12th and finished 16th. It seems to be that he's gone in the opposite way of Zhou Guanyu. Not had a great race. Never really seen much of him. They both brought upgrades this weekend. Kind of thought maybe we'd get a little something from Valtteri. I mean, I was never expecting points, but maybe just something. Not a great weekend from Valtteri Bottas, but very promising from Zhou. Long may it continue. Next up, Daniel Ricciardo. Qualified 18th, finished 15th. Not much to say about VCarb other than it was a stinker of a weekend. Yuki Tsunoda qualified 19th, finished 19th. As I've said, an absolute stinker of a weekend for VCarb. Probably one they're going to want to forget. A very rare poor performance from Yuki Tsunoda. The only driver that did 3 pit stops. He had a penalty to serve. Just an all-round poor weekend from Yuki. A weekend he'll want to forget. A weekend that Daniel Ricciardo will want to forget. Just, in fact, maybe not even that, because it's not as if Daniel did a bad job. They were just poor. VCarb as a team were just poor. So a weekend that VCarb will want to forget very, very quickly. Moving on, Alex Albon qualified P19, finished P18. I said this in my post-quali podcast. Alex Albon, it felt like he should be in the top 10. I was going into quali thinking Alex Albon will be into Q3, qualifying within the top 10, and he just didn't have it in him. Do I think this is a one-off? It feels like a one-off. Logan Sargent qualified P20, finished P20. How has this man finished behind Yuki Tsunoda, who, as I said, had a 3-stop race and a penalty? How has he finished behind him? I don't understand it. Let's move on to the Alpines. Esteban Ocon qualified P9, finished P10. And Pierre Gasly qualified P7, finished P9. Still a great result from the Alpines to be able to get 2 cars in the points. Solid points in their fight against Williams. Both Williams not performing at all this weekend. Speaking of a team that will again want to forget their weekend and the performance of their drivers, let's move on to Aston Martin. Lance Stroll, who qualified P14, finished P14. Fernando Alonso, who qualified P11, finished P12. Oh, not a great weekend for the Aston Martin team. They are not doing great this season. Fernando Alonso will not be happy in front of his home crowd. I bet he was wanting a better result. Just not great. Not great. So moving on to McLaren, and Oscar Piastri qualified P10, finished P7. When the cars crossed the finish, he was 31 seconds behind his teammate. Like, he was just 31 seconds off. Just not a great weekend for Oscar. Like, I expect more from Oscar. I know that it's only his second year, but he's showing promise, and I expect more from him. And just not a great weekend, to be honest with you, at all. Lando Norris, who qualified P1, finished P2. Lando Norris should have won that race. Lando Norris should have won the Spanish Grand Prix. And the only reason Lando didn't win is he had a terrible, terrible start. If Russell hadn't pulled the absolute insane move that he did, Lando was going to be behind Verstappen anyway. He just didn't have a great launch off the line. Lando gave it his all at the start. He actually pushed Verstappen off the track a little bit. It was deemed that there was no further investigation needed, but he was pushing hard. We've seen that. At one point, I thought Lando was going to do the one stop. It seemed that that was the strategy that McLaren was going to do for them. Verstappen had pitted. They kept Lando out. And it seemed that Lando was just going to push like really hard on those softs and just take them as far as he could. But he ended up doing the 2-stop. The 1-stop would never have worked in his favour. Did some excellent racing in terms of chasing up to Max. He had some fantastic battles with George Russell, and it is just a shame that at one point he did get caught behind traffic. I think this is a very similar situation to Imola, that had we had an extra few laps, Norris would have maybe cinched the win. He had a great performance this weekend, but his race was lost from the start. Do I think that McLaren could have helped him anyway with a strategy? No, I think McLaren did exactly what they needed to do. The strategy calls were the correct calls. Lando's loss was purely to him not getting off the line that well, and to a man called Max Verstappen, who is inevitable. And on to Ferrari. Carlos Sainz qualified P6, finished P6. I don't know what race Carlos Sainz was taking part in, but my God, he was moany over the radio. So first was the incident between himself and Charles Leclerc. Carlos managed to escape that turn 1 incident without some form of, not penalty, because I don't think it was worth a penalty, but I think it was probably worth giving the position back. He complained over the radio that, you know, Charles had made contact with him, but he still had the lead. He still got the advantage. He went off the track. He went off the track and got the advantage and was allowed to keep that advantage. He was allowed to keep the position. He then made contact with Hamilton. He complained over the radio again. The steward said that there was going to be no further investigation, and he spent quite a while complaining about it. He felt really hard done by. And what's even more wild is he benefited and gained the advantage for the exact same thing that he was complaining about Hamilton for. Moving on to Charles Leclerc, who qualified P5 and finished P5. Now, I know Ferrari had brought upgrades this weekend, and I know we see it sometimes, but it just felt like the upgrades almost kind of sent that car backwards a little bit. Did I expect more from Charles Leclerc? Yeah, I did. I expected that he would be able to achieve a little bit more than what he did. And it seems that Ferrari as a team have almost kind of fallen behind Mark. Like, they've fallen behind Mercedes. So I'm going to need Ferrari to pick it up a little bit. I don't really have much more else to say about Charles Leclerc, but I just need Ferrari and Leclerc just to pick themselves back up, come into Austria, and put on a great performance. Speaking of Mercedes, let's talk about them. George Russell, who qualified P4, finished P4. George Russell came out with probably one of the best overtakes of the season. P4. He went into turn one on the outside and just nailed that overtake and just took the lead. It was beautiful to see. Like, Lando and Verstappen off the line, not great. They were battling one another, the slipstream between either driver, but George benefited from the slipstream from one, gained the slipstream from another, took the outside, went onto the racing line, smoothly just cornered turn one and just took the lead. It was beautiful. Well done, George Russell. Just slingshotted that car from P4 right the way through to P1. Absolutely beautiful. Fortunately, didn't have any race pace and was easily overtaken by Verstappen within a couple of laps. Easily dispatched by Norris, and by that time was just kind of out of it. Lewis Hamilton qualified P3, finished P3. This is Lewis's best result of the year. It's his first podium since Mexico 2023. Will says that he's missing something. He knows he's missing something. He's very surprised to be on the podium this weekend. He was absolutely flying on those new softs. It was beautiful to see. He was killing it at one point, and it's just nice to see him back and being competitive. Sergio Perez, who qualified P8 and finished P8. What is going on with Sergio Perez? Because I don't understand. Tell me another driver that is this bad compared to their teammate. And I don't want to hear Logan compared to Alex or Ricardo compared to Tsunoda, because the comparison is not the same to Perez against Verstappen. Verstappen is winning races and Perez is all the way in the back. When the race finished, Perez was half a second off getting lapped by Max. In all honesty, like, what are Red Bull going to do? Like, what are Red Bull going to do? Because if this is his form for the rest of the year, even if he picks it up in the last few races, he's not getting that second in the championship like he did last year, because everyone else is far more competitive than they were in 2023. It is insane to see that Max Verstappen is winning races and Perez is battling a stake. Okay, so moving on to his teammate, Max Verstappen qualified P2, finished P1. Now, I've said this the past couple of races that Max has won. Max is fighting for those wins, and you cannot deny him that. He just outperformed everyone this weekend. I know that driver of the day went to Norris, but actually driver of the day should have went to Verstappen. Obviously, driver of the day is a fan vote. I get that, but Verstappen had the best race this weekend. He did. And this is why driver of the day is a little bit of a joke, because the fans will never give Max driver of the day, no matter how good a race he wins. And that is everything from us after a eventful Spanish Grand Prix. I would not say it was a banger, but I would say it was a good race that kept us guessing and entertained. And I am looking forward to Austria next week. I'll be back next with our predictions for Austria. I will not be here for a post-practice and post-qualifying debrief, because I will actually be at the Red Bull factory on Friday. But do not worry, as I said, I will be back before then for my predictions for Austria, and then I will catch up with you that weekend. Have a great rest of your day. I love you. Bye.